So we will be ready now to start today's webinar session. I would like to welcome everybody to Arton Capital's webinar series. It gives us a great pleasure and honor to welcome the Honorable Gaston Browne, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, along with Ms. Charmaine Donovan, the CEO of the CIA unit of Antigua and Barbuda. And it gives me also great pleasure to introduce you to our president and founder of Arton Capital, Mr. Armand Arton, and Ms. Elizabeth Makhoul, our program director of the Caribbean units. I would like to hand over the words to our president, Mr. Armand Arton.
Thank you, Carl, and welcome, Your Excellencies, Honorable Prime Minister, dear friends around the world. We had more than 455 registered participants. We're about half.
I believe, Armand, we can't hear you right now.
We are very excited to have. Pardon?
No, sorry. Please go ahead. We can hear you now.
We are excited to have our second webinar since this month, where we are focusing on a specific country. We'll start with open questions towards Gaston Browne and how he sees the economy going through this crisis. It will be followed by a description of the program of Antigua and Barbuda and the latest amendments that have made the program one of the most competitive in the industry. A conversation with Elizabeth Makhoul and Charmaine Donovan. I remind you, during all time, you can, through the chat at the bottom of the Zoom application, you can fire your questions, and towards the end of it, we'll be addressing all questions one by one. So again, without further delay, as many of you have already participated and knows about Arton Capital, I'll be very brief in the first part of introducing us. But again, at times like this, with the coronavirus, I think one's place of birth cannot be a limitation of where and how somebody can evolve as a person or as a citizen. And we believe that this is the core of being a global citizen. None of us on this webinar have chosen the place where we're born. And yet, that place of birth came with a passport that define you as a citizen of that country, with the opportunities as well as challenges of where you can travel or where you cannot travel. Through immigration, for history of human times, people have defined and challenged this status quo by immigrating. And today, the industry of migration has evolved in the last 25 years into what the citizenship by investment is. And we have more than ever received the number of applicants looking to change their nationalities, become a residents or citizens of other countries. Of course, 1% of this migration flow can do it through investment migration, while 99%, as you know, are taking variable other routes, sometimes risking their own lives as refugees. But at the end of the day, the prime need for all these people on the move, who are estimated to be more than 227 million as of today, always to access and mobility to other better places for their family and future. One of the second aspect of why people are accessing residency or citizenship is for better health and education. And again, through the corona crisis, we have seen that people have realized if they would have had a residence of another country in Western Europe or in a safer place from where they would be, that security plan would have definitely worked out. And that's what we're seeing as well as a first wave of Chinese and Asian application post the COVID crisis, for people realizing that they don't want to be stuck to a single passport, even though all passports are equal today. And it doesn't matter how powerful is your passport and how many countries it can take you. The importance is that today countries are allowing their own citizens and residents to come in regardless and any limitations of travel mobility for health reasons. So yet again, how important it is to be member or a citizen or a resident of one of those countries where you would have wished to be during that crisis. And Antigua is definitely one of those countries that I think many of us would have wished to be stuck during the last 2 months. Retirement and taxation, as you know, have always been a very small part of the demand of the why factor. People are applying for residency and citizenship, and this is, we haven't seen really a change of it. And the access is mobility, yet to be defined. What would mean mobility in the post-COVID? What it would mean to travel? What kind of visa restrictions and medical passports would be required are all of things that our industry, together with representative of ICAO, of IATA and the European Commissions, are all trying to find the right answers into what access and mobility will mean in the future. However, having the choice is always going to be of a great access for immigrant investors around the world. A brief about Arton Capital, again, for I recognize a lot of participants that have been with us for many years as partners, clients, and friends. So I'll be very brief, but over the last 17 years, we have grown the family of Arton Capital in over 12 jurisdictions, where we advise governments in different roles, from Canada, where we initiated our program. We're actively advising right now the federal as well the provincial province of Quebec, how to amend and how to improve the economic impact of this program, specifically in times like now, in order to support the smaller medium business and the jobs that so much will be needed in Canada, throughout the Caribbean islands, where we have, as I said, a focus on Antigua and Barbuda. And we have been speaking with Prime Minister Browne over the last 2 months actively on what are the measures his country has to take in order to create a great opportunity for Antigua as well as for foreign citizens. In Europe, we have not only offices and presence, but we advise countries like Montenegro, Cyprus, Bulgaria, Hungary, and most lately our mandate in Solomon Islands and advising on the feasibility of this country to come on the market of global citizenship. Again, for those who knows our Global Citizen Forum, it's another of, the Passport Index is one of the most used tools and has become the industry standard of more than 55 million visitors on the website and users. Many governments and international agencies are referring to this tool in terms of having the visa-free access verification between countries. The application on the Apple Store has more than 22 downloads in less than 45 days since we launched it. And we're extremely proud of this innovation that we had put for the first time in the industry. Now, Global Citizen Forum is the last opportunity, of course, we all had to be together 2 years ago in Montenegro. Unfortunately, with the Corona crisis, we had to postpone our event, which was scheduled for May in Armenia to 2021, and location will be soon described. But again, I think once people will be allowed to travel, we'll be looking forward to having all of you, and we'll be all missing that human interaction and that magic that happens at the Global Citizen Forum, which Prime Minister Browne has witnessed for many years. Because of the forum not being able to take a place, we have gone into the webinars and used the technology as this opportunity we have today. So as you can see, we have planned for the next 2 months webinars on specific countries. We did already Montenegro last year, Antigua. Next week will be St. Lucia, following by Portugal, St. Kitts and Dominica. So please stay tuned, and always will be a pleasure to have your questions answered and put a spotlight on these countries, how they will convert from migration policies to surviving the post-COVID crisis. Without further delay, I think, allow me, yes, and the Global Citizen magazine, which is now virtually available for all of you. A link will be sent to you from everybody who is registered on the webinar to receive the digital copy. And as well, the latest news on becoming a member of the Global Citizen Forum, which all are now complimentary and as well as digital accessible. So without further delay, I would like to ask Prime Minister Browne, with the current situation, how are you considering the economy of Antigua being ready What measures have you taken pre-crisis and during the crisis? And what is your outlook for the country as well as for the citizenship and investment in Antigua and Barbuda for the next 12 months?
Thank you very much, Armand, and special good morning or good evening, based on where you're located, to all of our participants. Now, let me make the point here that mobility is quintessential to human existence. And no matter the challenges, people will continue to move. But I believe that the COVID situation has created a number of opportunities for CIP programs. So whereas before the primary objective was to ensure that people could move freely, I believe there's now a security component that will make these programs even more attractive. Because we all know that in many cities, especially the clustered cities of the world, COVID would have devastated those cities. And it would appear that being in the warmer climes and being in less populated areas in itself is one of the ways in which the prevalence of COVID could be reduced. So in as much as I accept that COVID has decimated a number of economies globally, it has also created a number of opportunities. Now, in our particular case, we have had 25 confirmed cases of COVID. However, practically all but 4 have been retested and have fully recovered. So presently, we only have 4 known cases of COVID, and we're pretty sure that, on the basis that they've had the disease now for about 3 weeks, that when they would have been retested this week, that they will prove to be negative, which means that Antigua and Barbuda is now COVID-free. Clearly, there was no community spread in Antigua, and whereas all of our cases were imported, we were able to literally do the necessary contact tracing and to quarantine and isolate as appropriate. And as a consequence, we've had few COVID cases. And I think too that Antigua and Barbuda and many other countries within the OECS sub-region, they have been among the most successful countries and certainly the most successful region in the world in terms of containing the spread of COVID. So from a health aspect, we have done well. But what we have done here in Antigua and Barbuda is that we have taken the time to improve our health infrastructure. In fact, we're the only country within the Caribbean that, while COVID was decimating our economies, that we took the time to establish an infectious disease center. And that is a center that has 17 beds, fully equipped with ventilators. It also has piped-in oxygen, ICU beds, and many other high-end health equipment in order to manage severe cases of COVID and other infectious diseases. And that will be a standalone facility that will continue to operate indefinitely and is a very important part of our health arsenal. We also moved towards establishing an additional hospital. We have a 300-bed hospital already. We just established a new hospital which will be completed within a matter of 2 to 3 weeks, which will add another 75 beds, which will give Antigua and Barbuda the largest amount of beds per capita within the Caribbean area. Now, in addition, we are building out a cardiac facility as well as a kidney transplant facility. We have been doing kidney transplants here, but we're now building a purpose-built facility. And to ensure that we have a comprehensive set of services so that we can cater for all of the needs of citizens and visitors alike. Now, we also have a cancer center. We also have a stem cell therapy hospital. In fact, I would say that today we have easily one of the best health infrastructures within the entire Caribbean, and certainly the best among all of the countries that provide CIP programs. Now, insofar as education is concerned, we're the only country within the OECS sub-region among the countries that have CIP programs that have a university. I mean, barring the offshore medical schools, which we have a couple of them. We're the only country that has a university, and that is the Fort Landed campus of the University of the West Indies. And we continue to build out that campus as well, because what we want to do is to cater for the health and educational requirements of our citizens and residents. So during this period of COVID, we are spending an enormous amount of money to ensure that we improve our infrastructure, not only the healthcare and educational infrastructure, but even our broadband infrastructure. We also own a telecoms company, that is the government of Antigua and Barbuda, in addition to Flow and Digicel. And we're now spending about $50 million to get our own subsea cable and to literally reduce the price of broadband services and to make sure that broadband services are available in every single home. In other words, we see it as a public good that should be available to all homes. And at the same time, it will support a stronger e-commerce, e-medicine, e-education platform. So that is being built out presently. So, we are not daunted by COVID. I mean, we have taken a position that we must continue to live with COVID. We must learn to live and work with COVID without contracting it and without spreading it. And what we're focusing on now, literally the opportunities to reposition Antigua and Barbuda at the top of the food chain, to have the best CIP program, and as well as the most robust economy within the region. And we have achieved this on a number of years consistently as the fastest growing Caribbean economy in the world. In fact, in 2018, we grew the country's economy by 7.4%. And the interesting thing is that the year before, our sister island, Barbuda, was decimated by a hurricane, and we rebounded the following year to become the 10th fastest growing economy in the world. So that is why, I said earlier, we're not daunted by COVID. And I'm pretty sure that, we will come back pretty strong and that we will outperform literally all of the other Caribbean countries. So for example, all of the various investors who have pursued various projects, all of the capital projects that have been taking place prior, they continue. So for example, we have been expanding our port facility. We're spending $100 million building a new cargo port. We're also spending $100 million in expanding our cruise port. Those are projects that continued even while we were dealing with the issue of COVID. And the interesting thing is that we never ever closed down our country completely. We closed certain sectors of the economy in order to control the spread. And now we have reopened the entire country. And we're now awaiting the airlines and the cruise ships to tell us when they're able to resume flights and to sail to our shores. So we have literally managed the economic aspect and the health aspect concurrently and never opted for a hard lockdown. In fact, one of the things that we've been able to do as well was to provide a safe haven for yachties. In fact, we have over 400 yachts who have literally sought safe harbor here in Antigua during the period. And we have a number of high-end individuals who are given special permission to fly in, to stay at various properties here. In fact, luckily for Antigua and Barbuda, we have a number of high-end enclave residential properties. So for example, you have the Mill Reef Club, you have Discovery Bay in Barbuda, which is currently being built, and any one of you can take the opportunity to Google Discovery Bay. They are spending about $300 million to build one of the most impressive residential resort facilities within the Caribbean, and that is ongoing. You have Jumbi Bay. Jumbi Bay is easily one of the wealthiest, let's say, enclave in the world. I mean, a property on Jumbi Bay, for example, ranges between 20 to 60 million US, and you have no less than 100 properties on that island. That's a small offshore island that forms part of the state of Antigua and Barbuda. Then you have Windward Beach, Galley Bay. I mean, a number of residential enclaves. In fact, the government itself now is seeking to develop a residential enclave, or let's say a residential tourism facility, in which we also want to invite some of our participants here to invest. We're looking for investments so that we can build these standalone residential properties. It's actually a 50-acre property that we have identified. The government will put the land in as equity, and we are inviting investors to invest with us. So for example, you could invest in a home that, let's say, is valued a few $100,000 US, and you can probably sell it at a premium, maybe for twice the amount, and at the same time to have it into perpetuity, to rent within the pool, and to get a return on an annual basis. So that is one of the investment initiatives I would like our participants to consider and to advise if they have an interest to participate in that particular initiative. But in essence, we remain very optimistic about the post-COVID situation. We are ready to receive tourists, both air and sea tourists. And the various investments that we had planned prior to COVID, the developers have continued to commit to those projects. In fact, there is no other country in the Caribbean region that can boast about $1.5 billion US in investments. And I'll give you a few examples. I mean, you have, for example, a one and only hotel, $200 million US. We're hoping that that will commence later this year. There's a Marriott hotel, $50 million US. A Hilton for another $100 million US. There's also Calvin Air, the gaming mogul, who is doing a resort, a wellness resort for $200 million US. The Royal Caribbean Cruise as well. We have an agreement with them for them to spend $100 million in developing one of the most impressive cruise leisure facilities in the Caribbean. And they are presently completing their drawings so that we can proceed. So there, you know, we have well in excess of 1.5 billion, almost $2 billion US in investment projects that are taking place. And the future of Antigua is pretty well assured, notwithstanding the situation of COVID. So we have a very optimistic vision for the country, a country that will emerge like a phoenix from the ashes to become one of the strongest performers within the Caribbean and beyond. Now, as far as our CIP program is concerned, I said to the CEO, who will address you with more granular details, to let her know that second place is not sufficient for Antigua and Barbuda. At this point, especially during the COVID period and beyond, Antigua and Barbuda must have the #1 program. And I've said to her, I'm not settling for less. And whatever the stakeholders need, do it. Whatever is required by the stakeholders, just let us know, and we will go to Parliament as appropriate or to Cabinet and to make the necessary changes. I'm pleased to advise that whereas our program was lagging in terms of its turnaround time, that they have since established an electronic portal so that suppliers can upload their files electronically. And the processing time, I'm told now, has been reduced to as low as 45 days. And that is what we want to consistently deliver to our various stakeholders, to have a very fast turnaround time. We had reduced our NDF for a family of 4 to $125,000 US. That includes processing fees, and that is the absolute cheapest within the market. We also have a university option so that families of 5, 6, they pay a flat fee of $150,000 US, the absolute cheapest option in the market for large families. So I can say without fear of contradiction that Antigua and Barbuda offers the best value for money CIP option in the entire world, not just the Caribbean, but the entire world. In fact, our infrastructure is superior to all other CIP countries within the Caribbean, and our pricing is competitive, even cheaper than others. So it is the best value for money. Admittedly, the turnaround time was a problem before. We have resolved that. And I think that we're now ready to receive as much business as possible. We have the capacity to process and to process within 45 days. And I just want to encourage a stronger partnership with agencies like Arton and the others, and even other suppliers globally, to understand that Antigua is ready for your business. We are ready for business, that we feel very positive about the future, and that this COVID situation represents a special opportunity for us to exploit the, let's say, the need for individuals to have multiple citizenships, so that they can move to safety whenever you have these health problems. And it may not necessarily be health, it may be some other form of warfare that may take place in this hemisphere. But we have seen that almost invariably, especially with climate change, that we continue to get these pathogens, these viruses, that from time to time they mutate, they become unmanageable. And this will be nothing new, they will continue. Now, having a second or third passport, or maybe a fourth, if you can afford it, is quintessential so that you can move to areas of safety. I mean, we cannot rule out, for example, that at some point, based on all of the global tensions, that there may not be some form of biological warfare at some point that will create problems for wealthy individuals. I mean, clearly, we are in a zone of peace within the Caribbean region, and will always be that type of enclave in which people could retreat to safety. So I think that, with these threats, that there is strong demand for additional citizenships, and that Antigua and Barbuda is the obvious choice. And I give you a commitment that certainly no more than 90 days, as low as 45 days, we will process your transactions. Our CIP program, our unit for that matter, was advised, even during the COVID crisis, that they cannot close their doors. I believe we may be the only program that continued to operate during the crisis. So you can also be assured of the reliability of our program. In fact, I have actually now shown direct interest, and I'm helping to drive the process. So this issue now has the let's say, support from the top level. It always did, but even more so now, as I recognize that there are opportunities to be exploited, and we need to provide assurances to various stakeholders. And we're hoping that we can have a stronger partnership going forward, one in which we can even look at joint projects in which you could invest with us, with the government, even putting in land as equity to reduce the risk, and one in which we can create opportunities for all of our stakeholders. And I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I know that there are other contributors. I don't wish to take up all the time, but I'm available for any questions or any suggestions or any intervention, for that matter, that anyone would like to make. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. We did receive quite a few questions that we're going to raise at the end. I want to personally as well just confirm and congratulate your optimistic view on the future of Antigua and Barbuda, as well as globally about the industry. And I have to admit as well, I have personal friends that have take off from New York and Miami, and they have been quarantined and spent the last month and a half in Antigua and Jumbie Bay. They walk up to the reality is that that could not be only a holiday destination, that could be their second home. And I think you're right that once the world opens up, a lot of people will think differently about the isolation, the beauty of what Antigua can offer, and what was once maybe a challenge in terms of tourism because Barbuda was hard to reach. It will become actually an asset, and it will attract more wealthy investors to develop, amazing projects on places like Barbuda. And our last meeting was just before the crisis, as you remember, in Dubai, meeting some of the developers and sovereign wealth funds in Dubai, who stayed very much committed up to latest as last week, saying that they are now even more interested in projects like this that will offer a safe environment in isolated places for ultra high net worth people. And the CIP is always just an addition to that offering. But I think Antigua has a lot to gain in the future from this crisis. And as you know, some of the construction is starting as we speak this month on some of the projects. So again, that period of lockdown and slow tourism will be an opportunity for the hotels to upgrade their rooms, to start building. And I think the CIP should be here as an industry to support your country, your governments during that transition while the tourism dollars will be missing. So I commit on behalf of Arts and Capital our foremost best to promote the importance for the social impact of such programs for Antigua and Barbuda. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And now, without further delay, I will let my colleague, the lovely Elizabeth Makhoul, to discuss with Charmaine Donovan about the details of how the program was amended just before the crisis and what are the processing changes that have been implemented in order to facilitate the processing of files during the coronavirus. Elizabeth, to you.
Thank you, Armand. Good morning. Good morning, Prime Minister Gaston Browne. Good morning to our participants, my colleagues, and a special good morning to our CEO of the Antigua Barbuda Investment Unit, Mrs. Charmaine Donovan. Charmaine, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're quite busy, and I know that you've been quite productive, I must say. PM, I would reiterate what you said. Yes, we have been quite productive in the unit. COVID has been good for some of us, clearly. So without any further ado, we're going to go right into our conversation that Charmaine and I are going to be discussing. We know we have some potential participants or persons that would like to be a part of our Citizenship by Investment Unit. So we're just going to go into the reasons why you should choose Antigua, and then we're going to go into some recent enhancements that the program implemented to help make it more competitive and more attractive. And
Please,
then we would
just allow me to say good morning or good evening, dependent on your jurisdiction, to all of the participants. Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you to our esteemed Prime Minister for your impactful and very timely remarks. I also want to thank Armand Arton and his capable team for arranging this wonderful opportunity for us to bring Antigua and Barbuda and what we consider to be the most attractive and straightforward pathway to citizenship to your participants. Once again, I would like to personally welcome all of the participants and thank you for choosing to hear more about the fantastic Twin Island state that I call home and the exciting proposition of second citizenship and increased mobility. You will find that Antiguans and Barbudans are as warm as the year-round sunshine that we enjoy. And to borrow a line from the chairman of our board, there are many programs available for you to choose from. And if you're looking at them alphabetically, you will find that after the letter A, you will not need to look any further.
I like that. I like that one. Okay, good. So, and then we're going to speak about some of the steps that were implemented by the unit to help streamline and make the submission and processing of applications a lot easier during this pandemic that we've been going through. So we'll go into what we've why choose Antigua. But first, in March, as the program director of Arton Capital in the Caribbean, I secured an agent license so that we would be able to basically control all the areas of our files and applications and processing, so that we'll have more direct contact with the units and to be able to speed up again the processing on our part also. So I'm very glad to announce, or happy to announce, that I am now agent license. I'm now
Agent.
What do you call it?
Congratulations. Licensed agent.
Licensing agent, correct. Okay, so why choose Antigua? Well, for one, we do have the fastest processing time. We're processing files between 2 to 3 months. As the PM said, we have had files that we've been processing in less than 45 days. You can include your children under 28, and we can also include parents over 58 years old. There's no requirement to travel to Antigua and Barbuda during the application process. So you can basically stay at home and do the application. Arton Capital is right there to hold your hand and guide you through the process with the help of the unit, of course. There's no interview by the unit. There's no need for a certain educational background or managerial experience required. We have visa-free travel to over 130 countries, including the Shanghai Zone, the United Kingdom, Hong Kong, Singapore, and many others. Antigua is a no tax on worldwide income, capital gain, or inheritance. So our passport index, as Armand spoke about, is quite popular. It shows a mobility score of 138 for Antigua. individual ranking of 62. So it's very competitive. It's one of the strongest and most powerful passports. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so some of the qualifications that we look for from applicants are, one, we would outstanding character. You must hold no criminal record. And especially now with the pandemic going on, you must have excellent health. The PM spoke about, you know, how lucky we are in the Caribbean that we were able to basically control the pandemic at the COVID-19. I know tourism is going into a wellness area now where we're concentrating on health and exercise and food. The Prime Minister has his own garden, has his own farm in his backyard, and he's been encouraging us to exercise. He shows his farm every morning while he waters his plants. So we're very, you know, we want the world to see that we are a safe haven. Health-wise, the beaches, we have 365 beaches. Literally, you walk out your door and you can walk onto a beach. We do like to attract individuals with high personal net worth. And once you secure your citizenship, yourself and your dependents that applied with you would have to spend 5 days between the first 5 years of obtaining your citizenship. Okay, so Charmaine, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. I don't know if you want to speak about the 4 options that we do have at this point for our citizenship by investment unit.
Yes, just briefly.
Program, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Briefly, just wanted the participants to know that there are 4 pathways to citizenship under this program. Later on in our discussion, we will focus more on the NDF and real estate. But there are 4. The National Development Fund option, which is a one-time contribution to the government of Antigua and Barbuda. The investment threshold is 100,000 for a family of 4, for a single applicant up to a family of 4. And where the application is 5 or more, the investment threshold is 125,000. Then we have the real estate option, and there are actually 3 sub-options under this option. You can actually acquire a real estate unit for 400,000 independently outright. You can also join with another applicant, could be related by blood or just a friend, a close family friend, and each application would contribute 200,000 towards the purchase of that unit. Or most recently, we have established a new threshold of 200,000 that you can own outright independently. We also have the business investment option. So you invest in a business in Antigua, of course, both the real estate and the business investment options, these have to be approved. So it's an approved development that you purchase a unit from for real estate. It is an approved business that is approved by the government of Antigua and Barbuda that you will choose as your qualifier under the program. For a single investor, the investment threshold is 5 million. And if you have a consortium of investors, sorry, the single investor, the threshold is 1.5 million. And if you have a consortium of investors, then that threshold is 5 million, with each investor contributing no less than 400,000. Most recently, we have developed a new option, which is the investment in the University of the West Indies option. The 4th landed campus of the University of West Indies is now located in 5 islands in our beautiful country. And the government has established this option as a way to support that university. So in a nutshell, those are the 4 options. We will zoom in more on the National Development Fund and real estate further down in the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Charmaine.
If I could intervene here quickly, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just to reinforce what Charmaine said. Now, the university option, which is to help support the funding of our university, it is the cheapest option, the best value for money in the market, insofar as large families are concerned. It's a flat fee of $150,000. we pay a 20% commission, which means that you can get a $30,000 commission. So I just want to provide some elucidation there. And also to confirm too, that our real estate, we have a real estate option now starting at $200,000 US. Our objective is to make sure we have the best price point and the best value for all stakeholders.
Thank you for your.
Okay, so Charmaine, let's speak about some recent enhancements that were made to the program that was implemented by the unit effective April 1st. Let's speak about the different changes that were made to the real estate option to make it more attractive.
Well, Lisa, what I'd really like our participants to know is that we are aware that this industry is extremely dynamic and we're a very responsive program. The market forces normally dictate the value of real estate property. We have long been a luxury vacation destination, and as a result, the units that we have usually tend to be on the high end side. However, we've been listening to our clients and they've indicated, they've signaled that they are ready for an option at the 200,000 price point. And we've listened. The government has made the necessary amendments to the legislation to enable this to happen. And so you will still get a luxury unit at that price point. You can get full ownership. I spoke earlier about 3 different options under that same real estate option. And the most recent is you can own the unit outright for 200,000. The other new update would be that once you hold that investment for a 5-year period, you are able to then resell it under the program at least once, and it will cause another applicant to qualify for this option.
What I like about the real estate option and holding it for the 5 years, you're able to either put it into a rental pool also, and we've seen through Tamarind Hills how successful that has been, because they have a very successful rental pool management. And, you know, you can see that, yeah, it works really well. And
it's actually problem-free for the owner. You
yes.
Put it in a rental pool, that management company would maintain the property for you. And you actually even have an opportunity to make some residual income based on occupancy and rental.
Yeah, we've seen it work. Yeah, definitely. Okay, and another change that was made, or enhancement that was implemented, for those who are not aware, Antigua has some restricted countries that on our restricted countries list. For instance, North Korea and Somalia, Sudan, for instance, Afghanistan. We have Iran and Korea. At one point we had Iraq, but recently, as of April 1st. You have taken Iraq off that. Do you want to expand on that a little more?
Yes. What we constantly do is to look at the risk rating of these jurisdictions and then determine how we will manage them as a result. In our last review of the restricted countries list, we realized that Iraq did not score so highly as it used to. Most of the sanctions had been removed, and so we thought it fit to allow Iraqis to be able to apply to the program. Tangential to that is the fact that we removed the requirement for persons who are born in the restricted countries, so those would be 6 remaining on the list. Lisa would have called them out earlier. So we're no longer requiring you to live lawfully in the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia. What we're saying, we are accepting applications from all jurisdictions that are not on the restricted countries list. So then it should stand to reason that if you are born in one of those restricted countries, but you live outside of that country, you should be able to apply to the program. So we remove that requirement for you to live in 7 particular jurisdictions. Once you are residing in a country that is not on the restricted countries list, you're eligible to apply.
Correct. Yes, I think that was a nice addition to the changes that were made for sure. Something exciting coming out of the change.
If I may just jump in, we receive a lot of questions relevant to that new addition. How long do people have to be resident of these countries outside of the restricted countries in order to be able to apply? 10 years.
10 years. All of the qualifications still exist. So 10 years, no business ties. The other qualifications that were in existence remain. It's just that we've removed the requirement for you to live in these particular countries.
So now you can live.
I want to suggest to Armand that the stakeholders advise us on the period, whether or not 10 years is satisfactory or if it should be 5. We are open to further inputs as to how we can adjust the sanction list. And let me make it abundantly clear that the sanction list is important to prevent any form of violations of U.S. sanctions, because it has significant impact for the country, impact in terms of moving funds. So we try to follow in lockstep with the United States and their sanctions in particular, recognizing that most of our payments are made in US dollars and that we need US banks to settle our transactions. Now, an issue I just want to flag here, going back to the real estate option. I said earlier that the government will be making a 50-acre beachfront property available for development. And we are open to the idea of making about 500 files available at $200,000 US apiece to specified agents or suppliers. So we would like you, those of you interested, to get in contact with the unit. So if you want to contact me directly, my number is area code 1268-464-1500. That's 1268-464-1500, or Gaston Browne at yahoo.com, or talk to our ambassador. Talk to His Excellency Armand Arton, who will be able to give you further details as we apprise him of the full details of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, PM. Thank you very much. We're going to go back into just a change or something. One of the things that were one of the areas that was enhanced effective April 1st was that the unit dropped the processing fees for real estate from 50 to 30,000, Charmaine.
That is correct. As I said, we are a very responsive program, and we've been listening to our stakeholders, and what we sought to do was bring alignment across the options in terms of the processing fees. We had been hearing that the National Development Fund had a unique advantage because the processing fee was significantly lower than it was actually half the amount of the other options. And so listening to the stakeholders and trying to position this program to be the best, we have aligned all the processing fees so that there is no hassle.
And I think it's really it happened at a good time, because now that we're getting so many more queries about real estate, considering people are looking for a safe haven health-wise also, I think it's happened at the right time, and it will help us to fill up our product that we have on the ground, our real estate product.
Agreed.
And we'll speak more about what we have on the ground a little later on. Okay, so moving on. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, one of the great things that I must tell you, and I have to congratulate the unit. PM, I've experienced this myself. We literally went from being open to total shutdown in a matter of 12 hours, and the next day, I was blown away when I realized the unit was still operational. I was like, okay, this was seamless. I was totally impressed. And yes, I would tell you, it was the only unit open in the Caribbean at the time. And, again, COVID was good for a lot of things. Productivity-wise, they were amazing. I had no hassle at all. and they made some changes to the submission and the processing process where, you know, they did a nice package of only priority documents. And Charmaine, I just wanted us to go through the list of the priority documents so that everyone can see that, you know, we've simplified the process to make it easier, to make it quicker, and to make it more seamless.
That is correct. And, you know, it actually, for happenstance, we were already working on an online portal so that you can submit the files electronically. And we were in the testing phase. We had a group of persons piloting this online portal. And then up comes COVID, the COVID pandemic. So I think we were already positioned to be able to make that seamless transition. And what we did also, we realized that it's not Antigua alone that was affected by the lockdown. It was a global lockdown. And so persons would not have the regular accessibility to the various offices that they would have to attend to in order to put the application package together. So what we did, we sat down and we looked at what we actually need immediately to start the due diligence process. And so we moved from there. We spoke about all of the documents that we need in order for the due diligence to complete a full background check on the applicant and their dependents. Then we moved to what are the documents you would need post-approval, so in order for you to clear your funds to the bank. And then we also gave you the list of documents that will be needed when we reach at the passport stage. So I will just focus on what are the documents that you need right now in order to submit. So of course, all of the forms, AB 1 to 5, and what that does, it gives us the authorization to look into your background, and that's the information that we need. We need information on your family. We need information on your employment, where you reside, in order to facilitate that background check. Of course, these need to be signed. I know we've been fielding questions recently about if they can send unsigned documents, but if the documents aren't signed, we do not actually have the authority to conduct the checks. We've made it simple. We'll receive it electronically. So if you take, for instance, Arton Capital's team would populate.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
I have to, I really have to.
Well, I think everybody has a scan on their phones now, okay?
Right, that's correct. But I really have to emphasize it because, you know, so the team will populate the application form for you and send it to you via email. Most persons say that even though they have a printer, they may not have a scanner. The smartphones now, they all have apps that you can scan their...
No excuse, no excuse.
And upload it and send it back to Arton. And, you know, the quicker you send it in, the quicker we process.
Noted.
That's correct. So just to run through quickly, of course, we need certified copies of your bio page. And I also need to point out that those countries that are part of the Hague Convention, the requirement is that you get an apostille. However, we will accept the bio page without the apostille in order to conduct the due diligence. The only time that the apostille will definitely be required will be when you're at the passport stage. So it gives you some time to gather those documents. Yeah. We also need the copies of all of the valid visas you hold. What this does, it simplifies the due diligence process. So instead of looking for a needle in a haystack, we are pointed to specific areas. And so you find now that we can bring the processing time even further below 45 days if you assist us by sending in the valid visas. Prior to the COVID pandemic, we were requiring a bank reference letter and 2 years bank statements. Now we're saying that you can send us copies of your online statement. We realize that the banks usually only allow you 6 months. After that, it's archived and you still have to go through the process of contacting the bank and requesting the additional information. So we say, okay, 6 months is sufficient for us to look at right now in order for you to submit your application. Of course, now we need to verify your address. That's a requirement of law. So we're asking for a recent utility bill, so no older than 3 months. If you're living in a rental property, you would like a signed lease agreement, or if you own that property, then we will request documents of title.
Okay.
Charmaine, if I could intervene here, Lisa, I think I perhaps omitted one of the most important areas of my presentation, the issue of crime and violence. Antigua and Barbuda has the lowest level of crime and violence in the entire hemisphere, by no other country. Last year, for example, we had 2 homicides. This year so far, we have had 1. So in terms of safety, it is easily the safest environment in which to live. And it is also a multicultural society. About 60% of our population comprises immigrants, and that is because the island has done extraordinarily well economically, and we would have attracted a number of individuals from different countries, making it a melting pot. However, the largest concentration of immigrants are from within the various Caribbean islands. So again, the safest place to live in the Western Hemisphere, and one of the safest places in the world to live. Thank you.
So we're going to be the safest and the healthiest.
That's
And
right.
remember too that Antigua and Barbuda has no personal income tax. So there's no legislation to tax you on your personal income generated here on your worldwide income. So your gross is net. That is yet another initiative that we have in place that the other countries do not have. We do not tax personal income, period.
That's right. And Prime Minister, just to add to what you're saying, we also don't tax you on your capital gains. So if your portfolio is yielding income, we don't tax you on that. And if you have come into some wealth due to inheritance, we don't tax you on that either.
Correct. Yes, correct. Okay, right, so let's continue.
Yes, let's go back to about streamlining the process and the documents that are needed for us to start the due diligence on the applicant and their dependents. In terms of source of income, we definitely need to confirm that you are earning your wealth legitimately, and so we will need a letter from your employer if you are employed, as well as a 3 months pay slip. So if you're unable to get a letter from your employer in a timely manner, we will accept copies of the pay slips for the last 3 months. If you actually own the company, we will need a letter from the company on the company's letterhead confirming your affiliation with the company. So if you're a director or if you're a majority shareholder, and the income that you derive from that company. And to partner with this, we also need a copy of the share register showing your shareholding. So that is as it relates to the source of income confirmation.
And then if it's real estate, you need a copy of the investment agreement, of course.
Correct. So what I explained to you before relates to all options. However, for further documentation, if we are dealing with real estate or business investment applications, we're going to need the signed investment agreements, purchase sale agreements between the buyer and the seller. Additionally, for all options, if your dependents are older than 18, between the ages of 18 and 28, you would need to demonstrate that they are currently enrolled in an accredited university. That is a requirement. That's one of the definitions for dependents, especially if you are aged 18 and older.
Okay. If I might just ask a question regarding the investment part of the donations. You have discussed before, and we have received and directed towards you a lot of inquiries from agents across the world about the facilitation of opening accounts for the CRU units in other jurisdictions and in other currencies, USD. Can you please elaborate if it's something that the unit has been approved to do, and are you looking to establish such accounts in Asia and Middle East?
Yes, actually, we have received government approval to do this, and we are far advanced actually in two areas. To receive in Hong Kong, sorry, for our Chinese applicants, and the other one in Dubai for our Middle Eastern African applicants. Sorry. We expected to have finalized these arrangements, but then, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, it kind of delayed the process a bit because of the lockdown and work from home and so on. So we're hoping that in the coming weeks, we should be able to finalize these arrangements.
Very good.
So if I may just elucidate, Armand, we would have made legislative changes to allow for payments in different currencies, to include RMBs, in dirhams, US, euros. Those are typical Great Britain pounds.
Very good. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And we have agreed too that we can establish escrow accounts with different developers in the various jurisdictions, like in Hong Kong, in China, if possible, in order to receive payments.
Thank you.
Good. Good. That's going to make it more attractive. Okay. So just wrapping up the different changes or what we've done to help with the COVID pandemic delays and everything, I just want to reiterate to everyone and, let everyone know that from my experience, government offices and the Citizenship by Investment Unit is fully operational. They're both fully operational. Like I said, the unit was way ahead of me. I was taken back. I was like, oh, I got to play catch up. The unit was on the ball. I've experienced just minor delays in the due diligence, but it depends on where the due diligence is being done. Charmaine, I know you said that we would probably experience a little in China.
That's right. So if you take nothing else away from this webinar, what I'd like to underscore is that Antigua and Barbuda is open for business.
Absolutely.
It is fully operational. We are a very responsive program, responsive and dynamic program. We have the full support of the government, as the Prime Minister would have clearly stated earlier. Whatever it takes, the government will do to ensure that we remain the #1 program, not only in the region, but in the world. So we're fully operational. The delays that Lisa, you alluded to, relates to only specific applications.
Yes.
So our due diligence providers have expressed that they've experienced some delays, particularly in China,
Yes.
when they're conducting their due diligence, but it has been only for a small number of applications, and we have actually written to the agents to which those applications relate to advise them that there are some delays. So even though we did send out a circular to say that there may be some delays, that this is the signal from our due diligence providers, they have been able to come up with creative ways to circumvent the roadblocks that they have met upon.
Yes, and I've experienced that. Another thing, our banks are fully operational. Thank you to you, the unit, Charmaine, because our banks, they were also on the ball. They sent out, this is the Dropbox you're going to use. And, because they knew it was all citizenship by investment business that we were dealing with. And, they were responsive from the beginning. They've been available 9 o'clock in the night, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm really, hats off to them. I'm really impressed.
Been very, very cooperative.
Yes,
very, very cooperative.
Absolutely.
And people have been cooperative in providing them with whatever information that they need to satisfy themselves that the transactions can be cleared in a timely manner.
Yes, and I know the Prime Minister opened the passport office for us because we were the passports were building, the applications were building. So I realized he opened that back up after 2 weeks. So again, and then the application process of submitting the files on the online portal, that it's user friendly. So it works.
Here to stay. We will just continue to take the feedback from the users and work towards consistent upgrades and improvements, but the online submission is here to stay.
Absolutely, and just being able to allow us to submit any more required documents via email.
That's
And
correct.
again, I just want to say I've gotten approval in the last 60 days. I've gotten quite a few actually, so I know approvals and the whole process is speeding up for sure. So congratulations for that, Charmaine. I know it was a lot of work.
Yes.
And I see the difference, so I'm very glad for that.
Thank you. And that too is here to stay.
Absolutely. Okay, so just to summarize the National Development Fund, like we said, it's $100,000 for high net worth individuals. So you can choose this option, or you can choose the real estate option, which is $200,000 minimum, and you can invest in a property such as Half Moon Bay or Tamarind Hills. But we will go into those offers in a little bit. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. So we're gonna, Charmaine, you're just gonna summarize the program fees, just the generalizing of the due diligence and the processing, since we made some changes recently.
That's correct. So as it relates to due diligence, and just to underscore that the due diligence fees need to accompany the applications, because that's how we're able to conduct the background checks. So if it's a single applicant, the due diligence fee is $7,500. If it's applicant and spouse, $7,500. For your dependents, if your dependents are 11 and under, there's no requirement to pay due diligence fees. We don't conduct due diligence on those minor children. If your dependents are between the ages of 12 and 17, the due diligence fee is $2,000. And for dependents 18 years and older, so including your parents, your in-laws, grandparents, the due diligence fee is $4,000 per individual. Again, the processing fees have been aligned across all options. So it's $30,000 up to a family of 4. And for the 5th and the 6th and onwards, dependent, it's $15,000, additional $15,000.
Okay, and if you can just
to elucidate here, for the university option, there are no additional processing fees. 150,000 flat. Am I correct?
That's not the information that we've sent out. So there's still processing fees for the UE option.
So
yeah, my understanding, we got to get that clear, because my understanding of the university option is that we're catering for these large families, and that we charge a flat fee of $150. If it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there are no additional processing fees. So there's some misunderstanding there with interpretation. And that is why I made a bold statement earlier that it is the cheapest in the market. So you need to amend your literature accordingly. I want to repeat for the benefit of all that it is a flat fee of $150,000 for large families, even if it's 10 individuals in your family. And we're talking about a nuclear family here, the people who live in the same household, not for people to conveniently to be adding family members. So if you happen to have a large family, you pay $150,000 US and the due diligence fee, and that is it, a flat fee. And the commission for that option is 20% or $30,000.
Yeah, Prime Minister, I just want to confirm indeed that there is a confusion on the market about this option. As many people have the information on one side that it's 150 plus, which doesn't make it very attractive.
No. I mean, you can't sell. If that was the case, you could not sell it. It doesn't bring any additional value.
Exactly. So we'll work with Charmaine definitely to clarify this offering, and we'll go to market with it as soon as possible once we have the exact numbers, and if they can be backed with the official letter.
Well, let's put it this way, Armand. You get it from the top policymaker. It's 150,000 US flats.
We'll work on the literature, the language.
And all I'm asking now is for the unit to clarify it, clean up the language, and get it right. But that is the policy. Thank you.
Okay. Quickly, just the steps. The steps are, it's a 6-step process. The file preparation is done by Arton Capital, and then we submit the file to the unit. Then the unit issues approval letter, and here is where it goes back into your court, Charmaine, correct?
That's correct. All in your hands. The law gives you 30 days within which to make the investment and pay the balance of the processing fees. And you know, how soon we get to the next stage is totally dependent on you. So if you get your approval today and you submit your funds tomorrow, then you can get your certificate of registration and your passport in a very short time, less than 30 days.
Correct. That's it. 6 steps. That's it. Okay. So that's basically you know, that's basically the process in a nutshell. We're going to go into the real estate options. Just quickly, so we just chose 3 off the top of our heads, the most popular ones that, you know, people are asking about. The first one, Carl, if we can go to the first real estate option slide, which is Rosewood, Half Moon Bay. Now, Half Moon Bay is situated on one of the best beaches in Antigua, the bluest water, the whitest sand, one of my favorite childhood beaches. I don't know if I can ride those waves now, but it's one of the most popular beaches in Antigua. Minimum investment of $200,000 and it's shared ownership. There's an investment holding period of 5 years, and the developer is Replay Destinations. It's really a beautiful, beautiful piece of real estate, and you're not going to get better. You're not going to get better sand and water. Then we have Tamarind Hills. Tamarind Hills is ready product. They have product on the ground. You can have whole ownership starting at $530,000, or you can have shared ownership starting at $200,000, of course. It's a completed luxury beach and oceanfront apartment and villas for sale. Like we said earlier, they have a successful rental management pool, and they've proven capital growth for resale time and time again, because they've been expanding, and though they're actually located, the best views in Antigua, the best views. Like, you remember some years ago, they had this thing, I can see Russia from my backyard. We can actually see St. Kitts from Tamarind Hills. And it's usually every day because we have no air pollution. Our pollution is it's non-existent. So we can actually see St. Kitts. On some nights, you can actually see the car lights.
You can also see Montserrat.
Well, yeah, and you can see the little lava coming down the volcano, but it's dormant. So it's really breathtaking. One of my favorite places to go and camp during the Easter holidays. And it's also sharing part of another childhood beach. Remember Miss Browne? We had to used to pay $1 to go to Miss Browne when we were younger. A beautiful beach. I mean, all our beaches are white sands, blue waters. And it also comes with, the villas come with a full service 5-star resort. And then we have the Marriott Hotel, which would be starting construction in maybe, well, let's say they're ready, and it's dependent on when the borders would be open. So the minimum investment again is $200,000, and it's shared ownership. It's in close proximity to the airport, literally right on the airport. So it's a great business hotel option. So it's going to be very popular, especially with the brand name Marriott. And it's also 5 minutes away from downtown St. John's, which is the business arena. 125 guest rooms with suites. So I think, you know, we've covered high end to affordable. So we can, you know, we basically reaching out to the entire world. We have something for everyone. Okay, so that would bring us to summary. Donation, 100K. Real estate investment, minimum of 200K. And your approval within, I'll change 60 to 90 to 45 to 60 now. Charmaine, what do you say?
That's correct. That is correct.
And please don't forget the university option at 150, right in the middle between those two.
I have it written down. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charmaine, I don't know if you wanted to, sorry, Armand, I don't know if you wanted to close off with anything in particular, Charmaine, on our presentation.
I wanted to thank the participants. I see at one point we had close to 300 people viewing, and it just goes to show that there is great interest in our program. We have really worked over the number of years to build a really, really beautiful product. We have aimed for #1, we are there, and we want to be able to maintain that. Again, we're a very responsive program, so feel free to share your feedback as to how we can enhance the program. The government is also very responsive and supportive. And as I said, after you've checked out, after you've looked at all of the programs, you'll find that you look at A and you don't need to go any further.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's it for Charmaine and I with our presentation. I think I'll hand it over back to Armand to go into the next area.
I open, now we'll be reading some of the questions, Carl. A lot of them were answered actually, some by us and Prime Minister directly. Many people are asking for your Prime Minister's number again, your address, and I will not read everything else they're asking.
I think we might have to get security involved. They're asking for your address, PM.
Oh, that's fine. So let me give my number. It's 1268-464-1500. You could add me to WhatsApp and talk to me directly, or you can email me at gastonbrowne@yahoo.com. That's GASTONBROWNE@yahoo.com. Not trying to bypass, our capable agent, Armand and others, but just in case further information is required and you need to speak to me, I'm available. I'm taking a personal interest in this program to make sure that we have the best program in the world. So you have direct access from the top down.
And there are not many prime ministers that we have worked, and we work with few of them that have this open door policy, for which I respect you very much, Mr. Browne. And I encourage many of the others to follow your example. Okay, Carl, if you want to start with some of the questions.
Yep. Thank you very much for this very informative session. I would like to start with a question received from Vasim Govender, which would be, given the currency depreciation in the emerging market, is there potential to design a program that is more cost effective? Arton has designed such a program for Bulgaria, when an investor pays for all financial costs for a loan against the government bond.
Right, that's the question to me.
Prime Minister is, are you going to lower the prices?
Well, I don't know that at $100,000 US that it would make much sense to lower the price. That'll be literally a race to the bottom. And remember too that what we're trying to do here is to attract high net worth individuals. We are not scraping the bottom of the barrel. We are not seeking, budget buyers of homes. We are seeking high net worth individuals who are not as price sensitive, who can actually buttress different shocks that the globe may face or the world may face from time to time, typically of COVID. In fact, in terms of our tourism product, we are now moving to high-end tourism residential properties, and you have to have resources to build those properties. And certainly $100,000 US is literally peanuts for high net worth individuals. So the idea of reducing the price is counterproductive. But I will say though, having an option, a bond option, I think is important. And I'm asking Charmaine now to have herself and the board of the CIU unit to establish or to put the parameters together for that bond option, so we can have an additional option for our customers.
Sure thing, Prime Minister.
Good.
Thank you very much. I have received a question from Bruno Lesauer, which it would be, what plans are being put into place to ensure the air connectivity into Antigua and Barbuda once the health crisis is over?
Right, so our airport is not being completely closed. We have been accommodating a number of private jets. Up to yesterday, we had Calvin Air and a group of individuals flew into Antigua and Barbuda on their private jets. So we've been taking jet traffic consistently. However, in terms of the commercial flights, as soon as the airlines are ready to to fly back into Antigua and Barbuda, we'll accommodate them. We anticipate that this should happen possibly within the first week of June, within the next 3 weeks. But we're now ready to receive guests, and we have already taken the decision to make the country available to receiving guests in June. And as I said before, we opened our domestic economy. It was never fully closed; it was a partial lockdown, and we have removed all restrictions with the exception of social gatherings, and those entertainment aspects that result in a significant amount of social gatherings in order to contain the spread of COVID in the event there is a second wave of COVID.
Thank you very much. Armand, I have a question received from one of the clients, which would be very interesting. How do you see the demand for Caribbean programs compared to European programs?
Well, the Caribbean...
I think it answers completely different group of people. Some are really looking for a physical relocation to Europe. We have seen a lot of Greece and Portugal as being really an end destination for people that does not want to have the necessarily a freedom of mobility, but they want to be able to relocate to these places. The Caribbean, and again, more specifically Antigua and Barbuda, have completely, I think, targeted a different market of people who wish to maybe more be mobile and have the option of, as I said, spending some time, but none of the clients we have processed in the last 5 years for the Caribbean have relocated with his family and his businesses in the Caribbean. So I think those two pool of investors who are different, ones that are really looking to seek freedom, mobility, independence in times of crisis, and the other one who are really looking to leave their countries, being in political or war situation, and relocating their family and businesses to Europe. So again, residency in Europe and citizenship in the Caribbean for me are tackling two different issues. We had a few questions, Prime Minister and Charmaine, if I can address as well while I'm speaking, is there any personal net worth requirements in addition to the fact of the amount that they have to invest under the donation, university, or real estate?
Charmaine, you want to take that one? Well, there's nothing in law for sure, even though we are trying to attract high net worth individuals. The reality is someone who can spend $100,000 to get a second citizenship must have some level of wealth. So that in itself will help to differentiate the individuals who we get. But in terms of having a specific cap or let's say a minimum requirement, there's no such minimum requirement. Now, on the issue of the demand for Caribbean CIPs, I am of the view that based on the fact that COVID and other infectious diseases in the future are likely to affect densely populated cities more so than, let's say, islands in the Caribbean with lower population density, that in itself will be a major selling point. Now, we have to understand too that a number of services can be delivered remotely, so that you'll find professionals, for instance, in the developed countries, they can have a home here in the Caribbean and work remotely, just as how we're having this seminar remotely. They can do so from the comfort of their home here in the Caribbean and enjoying a standalone property rather than to be in a densely populated area in New York. And let us understand that New York, for example, has a population density of about 11,000 persons per square kilometer. And in the case of Antigua and Barbuda, I mean, you're looking at about 200 persons per square kilometer. So with that type of population density in those countries, I think that people who have the disposable income should be able to have some level of insurance and to be in a position to fly in the event of any such pandemic in the future, which evidently will happen again. And let's face it too, there's likely to be second, third, and maybe fourth waves of COVID. I mean, this coming winter, as an example, I believe that these major cities will be literally bracing themselves for a re-emergence of COVID. And it is expected too that a vaccine could take a few years. In that case, and you have COVID lurking around for a few years, individuals don't need a safe haven. So the Caribbean is strategically placed because of the low level of violence, the stability, the economic stability, the social stability that exists within this region, as well as the fact too that we have a very low population density.
Thank you. Another more political questions for you, Prime Minister. As you know, in the last months, the European Commission have continued to work, even though in crisis. They were very active in sending different letters to CIP countries within Europe and outside of Europe. Is Antigua have received any threat from the European Commission or Parliament on the program, or any questions? It's something that Antigua and Barbuda has defended very well over the past, the same way as you have been removed from the blacklist. I think this is initiatives that you take the leadership in the Caribbean. What are you doing in respect of, one, European Commission, two, reestablishing the visa-free with Canada? And the last is, are you working on having an E2 visa for United States once somebody is in Antigua? Is that kind of agreement something that Antigua is negotiating with the United States?
Right. So we are not on any sanction list. Unfortunately, the European Union just yesterday signaled that it will be putting out yet another sanction list of countries that would not have satisfied the level of tax transparency as well as the AML-CFT framework that is required. A number of Caribbean countries would be included, Barbados, Jamaica, Bahamas. Fortunately, Antigua and Barbuda is not one of those countries. We have been very proactive in making the necessary changes, the legislative changes, as well as ensuring compliance. So we have been effective, not only the legislative changes, but to ensure that we operate within the confines of the international standards that have been set for tax transparency, AML, and CFT. So that is extremely good news. And it means, therefore, that there shouldn't be any heightened due diligence on transactions, especially financial transactions, coming to Antigua or emanating out of Antigua and Barbuda. And we intend to keep it that way. Now, insofar as the E2 is concerned, we have a matter with the United States WTO settlement, and that is one of the areas in which we've asked them to include in a potential settlement. It has been protracted for some time, but we still remain hopeful that we'll be able to resolve that issue shortly. And Canada, we continue to negotiate with Canada, not only for Antigua and Barbuda, but for all of the other OASIS countries that offer CIPs. And you may recognize that none of the countries that offer CIP enjoy any form of visa-free access into Canada. But it's an area that we continue to advocate for access, visa-free access, or even if they have maybe an ETA as a minimum requirement. In fact, the Foreign Minister of Canada was in the Caribbean just a few months ago, and we had the opportunity to, request for Canada to have closer relationships with CARICOM countries. I mean, traditionally, Canada has been one of the closest allies of CARICOM countries, but they seem to have moved away, and it's a discussion I'm having with my counterpart, who is also a personal friend, Prime Minister Trudeau, for him to now to be proactive in strengthening the bilateral as well as the multilateral relationship with the Caribbean. So I remain hopeful that we should see some movement at some point on that issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have received from one of the participants, Mr. Carlos Gil, a question to your Prime Minister. He would like to know if a deposit in an international bank in Antigua and Barbuda is eligible as an investment under the CIP program.
And the answer, is yes. Clearly, they will have to satisfy the requirements under the business option. On the basis that those requirements are satisfied, that would not be a problem.
Thank you very much for that.
Sounds like everyone is going to move to Antigua PM. Charmaine.
And that with the assumption too that they have to apply for the necessary licenses and so on from the Financial Regulatory Commission or the Financial Services Regulatory Commission. So that's a given. On the basis that they get the approvals and they satisfy the requirements of the business option, definitely yes.
Talking about banking, Prime Minister, can you describe the banking sector in Antigua? How many banks onshore, offshore? And you have been a very voicely lobbyist in the US and across the world about the correspondence relation problem, which a lot of Caribbean countries.
Well, we have been literally consolidating our banks. The most recent one is the acquisition of the Scotia branch here in Antigua with assets of about $500 million US, which will be acquired by a domestic bank, the Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank, of which the government of Antigua and Barbuda is a shareholder. And as a result of this acquisition, our shareholding is likely to increase to about 45% in that bank. Total asset base of the bank will be about $1 billion US. We also have shares, as a government, we have shares in another private bank. It's a small bank with an asset base of about 150 million US. We own about 80% of that bank, the Caribbean Union Bank. And we're quite willing to partner with investors who may want to invest in a bank and to even use the CIP option to expand the capital base of the bank to make it bigger so that it can grow faster. But we are interested in doing international business outside of the domestic retail banking, which is literally a saturated market. So if there are investors who would like to have a stake in a domestic bank that is owned 80% by the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and to bring additional international banking services to expand the scope of the bank, we can certainly make that a CIP option, a CIP investment, and we can work along with those partners to turn that into an international business or to turn what is clearly a domesticated bank into an international bank.
Thank you very much. I have another question received regarding the citizenship for Ms. Donovan. Is the citizenship acquired through the program passed to the next generation?
Yes, well, most recently, the government would have made a change that the citizenship can be passed on to up to grandchildren. You just add the dependent during the first 5 years of acquiring citizenship.
All right. Thank you very much.
Maybe you can mention the limited time off on that.
Oh, that is correct. Thank you, Lisa. So up until the 31st of October this year, you can now add your dependent child from newborn to 5 years at 10,000 US, and dependents age 6 up to 17, it's 20,000. Adult dependents, the regular processing fee addition, the fee to add the dependent applies.
We really were supposed to add that that slide because remember it was recently introduced too.
That's correct. That's
so I'm
correct.
glad for the question.
Yes, it's a good opportunity to just highlight it though. So thanks for that question.
Absolutely.
We have another very interesting question, which I would like to address to the round. What would happen if after 5 years a person has not spent the minimum 5 days in Antigua?
Well, if I could just answer that quickly. Right now, because of the global lockdown and limited mobility, we have agreed to set aside for the next 12 months the requirement to come and spend the 5 days. I think that the government will look at that later on and determine where we go thereafter. But for the next 12 months, that requirement will be set aside.
Let me add here, that provision is to encourage individuals to have some connection with the country. Now, if for some reason, someone, inadvertently may have forgotten, didn't get the opportunity to travel within that 5-year period, I mean, we're not going to take any draconian decision to cancel the person's citizenship. So, it is a requirement of law, but at the same time, it's not a case in which we will use it as an opportunity to deprive people of their citizenship. Having said that, we expect people to at least, travel to the island once within 5 years, acquaint themselves with a new country of citizenship, because it's also important for them to understand the domestic culture and, even to make friends and to have some level of people-to-people exchange with the domestic population. in opposed to just having a remote citizenship and being disconnected. So I think it's a very sensible requirement, but it was not placed in the law to be punitive to anyone.
Right, thank you very much for that. I have a question for Armand. As one of the leading industry experts, what do you think that the government of Antigua and Barbuda should do and change in order to attract more application, especially now during the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I think, as I said, the conversation we've been having in the last months and the last visit of Prime Minister to Dubai, which was in February, really translated in most of our recommendations being implemented. So everything that has been presented in this webinar, it's a fruit of not only ours, but a lot of industry participants' recommendation to Prime Minister and to the unit. And I think most of them have been already implemented, including the 5 days that we're talking about. I think as a first step, just to waive that requirement for the next 12 months is already a good initiative, because there is, as you know, people who are arriving at their 5-year of renewal of passports in 2020 or 2019 haven't been able to complete the 5 days, pushing it always towards the end. And now they're very much afraid what's going to happen. Can I renew my passport, or I will not be allowed to be renewed my passport? So the flexibility of the government in that perspective is very welcome from the industry, from the clients. The rest of the options and amendments and changes, as I said, the donation for the university needs to be clarified in order really to trigger the demand, because I think once, especially in the Middle East, where we have very large families, once the industry as well as the potential clients realize the real opportunity of one, helping a health university, medical university in that crisis, and being a very, I would say, interesting financially option for all stakeholders, will definitely, I think, will be very well received and promoted. But for the moment, there is a little bit of confusion, which we're going to definitely try to clarify. So the rest, I think, no, the government is doing the best what they can. There is a talk about a bond option in the Caribbean in general between other states, and that's something that the Prime Minister will look, because again, the real estate is definitely an option, and then you have the donation, and there is nothing in between. I think the government could definitely raise between 10 and 20 million from bonds that pay zero interest to the clients, which is definitely cheaper than any other international financing cost at this stage. And, you know, bring back to the investor that confidence that at the end of the 5-year, instead of not knowing what will be the value of the real estate, in the case of the bond, they will be receiving their capital. You know, that's called social impact bonds. They're very popular now across the world. And I think with the right marketing and the right structure as such bonds, as social impactful bonds, they can raise a quite significant amount.
Thank you very much. I have another question regarding taxation, which would be from Mr. Clive Makhoul. What are the tax implications for non-resident citizens?
Right, so we have no personal income tax. It means, therefore, that any income earned locally, there's no tax to be paid. And even if you do earn income external of Antigua and Barbuda, then clearly the law does not apply any taxes. Clearly, if the person earns income in a particular country, then the domestic law in that country will apply. But there's no requirement for any payment of any form of personal income tax in Antigua and Barbuda. And insofar as corporate taxes are concerned, corporations pay the taxes within the country where the revenue is generated. I mean, our rate of corporation tax is 25% for domestic companies, but those that do business offshore, it is actually zero, with the understanding that they will adhere to or honor any tax liability that they may have incurred in the country where the service was actually offered or generated.
Right. Sorry. Coming back to another questions we have received, which I would like to address it. I have somebody asking about the oath of allegiance after getting the citizenship. Can that person go to an embassy or consulate outside Antigua to take the oath instead of inside Antigua?
Yes, that is actually in effect. We've had several persons who've used the High Commission in London to facilitate this.
Right, thank you very much. I have somebody else who is a little bit concerned regarding the power electricity in Antigua. That person has watched a YouTube video where a visitor to the island was taken aback by the power outage. How is that situation?
Right, well, I know there's a period in which you're doing
Maybe we need to ask PM when they came, because
yeah, it must be a long period of time, because you know, I know during one period we were doing some maintenance to the 60 kVA line that goes right around the entire island. It had to be replaced. So as they systematically replaced it, there were outages. In any case, we have greater power capacity than our peak demand. And we continue to transition into green energy applications. So power outages are only scheduled ones where they're doing significant maintenance and maybe taking you know, one or two of the large sets off the grid, and they're normally very, very infrequent and for very short periods.
Okay, thank you very much. We have received another question which I would like to address to Ms. Donovan, which is the unit planning to implement more changes in order to ease the application process.
Well, immediately there are no changes that we're looking at, but as we said before, we're very responsive, and where we have feedback that persons are encountering challenges with submitting these documents, we've actually provided workarounds on an as needs basis.
All right, thank you very much. We would like to know more regarding the tax status for the residency. Could you give us more insights on that?
Right, so the residents, they pay no personal income tax. Corporations, they pay income tax of 25% on their profits. And we have taxes on things imported into the country. So there are these customs duties and taxes. On average, they range in the region of about 40%. So we are a low tax jurisdiction. In fact, the government's tax to GDP ranges around 15%. In fact, we are the lowest tax jurisdiction in this hemisphere. The developing country standard is such that there should be a tax to GDP of about 25%. Within the region, the OECD sub-region, it is between 25 and 30%. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, it's 15%. So our strategy has been one of low taxes and high investments. And that is why we continue to focus on attracting more investments. Even those investments attract significant concessions. They get up to 25 years tax-free concessions based on the size of the investment, so that all building material, furnishing, fixtures, equipment, they are imported into the country free of all duties and taxes. And that is done deliberately to reduce the variability of risk associated with investment and to make the investment more viable. And we recognize too that businesses need to generate profits in order to continue to grow and expand. And that is why we have offered income tax waiver up to 25 years. In addition to, we allow for the repatriation of profits so that you know, individuals can get a steady return on their investment and to be in a position to repatriate those profits without any taxes on the profits. So very low tax regime and very, let's say, lucrative tax-free regime or low tax regime in order to stimulate significant domestic and foreign investments.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. And we have received over 70 questions overall, but we won't be able to answer all of them. We'll definitely answer each one of it by email afterwards. We'll put you in contact with Charmaine or the Prime Minister if requested unspecific, but we'll be able to assist you. So I don't want to abuse of your time, Prime Minister. It was great to have you, great to see you, to see that you're in good health. You're managing your country in the best way possible, and we're proud to help and represent Antigua and Barbuda across the world as your agents. Again, God bless Antigua and Barbuda and all citizens around the world.
Thank you. Blessings.
And I'd like to say thank you to Charmaine.
Thank you, Charmaine.
Thank you for joining, Charmaine. Thank you for taking up, taking up your morning, spending your morning with me. I know we had our coffee together.
That's my pleasure. Anything to promote this really great program. The word has to get out there somewhere that this program is really the best. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Charmaine, as I said to you, IMF funding is not the answer. CIP is the answer. Thank you.
Yes, PM.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, fellow participants, thank you as well for your participation. And we hope to see you at our next event next week with the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Alan Chesney, and representative of the investment by unit. Thank you. We'll be announcing, as I mentioned, it's going to be the 13th of May, next Wednesday, same time, 5 o'clock. The government of St. Lucia will announce their first social impact Corona CIP bonds. All details to follow next week. Thank you for your time. Stay safe around the world, and we appreciate dedicating those moments and few hours with us. Thank you.